Now, Ask Dr. Love with psychotherapist, author, love and relationship expert Jamie Turndorf, Ph.D. For expert advice on love and relationships, call into the show at 888-463-6748. That's 888-GO-FOR-IT. Or you can submit your question online at AskDrLove.com. Now, here's Dr. Love.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Ask Dr. Love Radio. I'm Dr. Jamie Turndorf, and I'm happy to be with you for today's show, How to Make Keeping Your Cool your number one relationship rule. Did you know that unresolved conflict is the number one killer of love? And did you know that keeping a cool head rather than blowing your top will determine whether you have a productive conversation that leads to a resolution of your issue rather than a dissolution of your relationship? Well, stay tuned as I share my proven techniques for cooling down your relationship discussions so you can resolve your issues and preserve your relationships. So, in essence, keeping cool helps keep things warm. Then a little later in the show, I'm going to lay 3 questions on you. The first one's called confusion. And here I'm helping out a girl who's convinced that her boyfriend is only with her for the sex that they haven't yet had. And she's also sure that when she gives it up, her boyfriend is going to start neglecting her. So stick around to find out how she can tell whether her fears are founded or whether they're phantoms from childhood that are haunting her relationship. The second question I'm going to answer is girl problems. And in this question, I'm helping out a guy who is totally ashamed that he engaged in a flirtation with his best guy friend's gal. And he had a heated fight with the girl and wants to know how to make this mess right. So stick around to find out not only what he can do to mend fences, but what he also needs to do to improve himself as a person. And the third question is, how can I make him stop doing things that are making me feel guilty? And in this question, I'm helping a young woman who hurt a guy who was interested in her, and she doesn't like him. And she wants to know if she should ignore him or try to help him snap out of it. So stick around to find out the right way to let him down easy. And then, of course, I'm going to do a reading between the sheets segment where I put one of those tough sexual problems to bed. And this one is wondering how to help him forget my past one-night stands. And in this question, I'm working with a woman whose boyfriend can't lay to rest who she's laid in the past. So stick around as I explain what his obsession over her previous sexcapade says about him and what she can do to move him past his sticking point over who has stuck it to her. Okay, so now let's get on to the body of the show. So if you've been listening to my show for a while or you've been reading my books or columns, you know that cooling down your communications is linked to relationship satisfaction. Let me give you a scenario. So imagine you're in the throes of a heated argument with your mate, and suddenly his eyes glaze over and he turns stone deaf. And since he's not listening to what's bugging you, you turn up the volume, hoping to blast the wax from his ears. No use. Instead of understanding, he digs his heels and defends his actions. So now you're really pissed. So you crank your emotional thermostat to the max and you hammer harder. Big surprise, he's more deaf, more defensive, or just plain out of there in the flash of a firefly. Now, did you know millions of women throughout the world are all too familiar with the way men distance themselves emotionally or physically whenever conflict erupts? And the technical name for this is the demand-withdraw negative escalation cycle, more commonly known as husband withdrawal. You know, I did the Today Show, and when I got to this part and I explained it and I said husband withdrawal, the announcer said, "Are you talking about a natural form of birth control?" Well, I didn't see that one coming, if you'll pardon the pun. Anyway, according to research, husband withdrawal is the number one cause of marital conflict and divorce, as well as domestic violence. And my book, Till Death Do Us Part, Unless I Kill You First, is all about breaking this number one fight pattern. And what causes this pattern is the collision of two incompatible modes of handling conflict, that of the wife who intensely expresses her hurt or anger, and that of the husband who withdraws from the confrontation. Now, if you want to extinguish this common fight pattern, it's vital to understand the biochemical imbalance that's actually fueling it. Now, let me explain. Men's bodies are hardwired to be hyperreactive to stress and danger. And this programming dates back to prehistoric times when men were hunters and they needed to react with lightning speed to flee or to fight dangerous prey. Now, modern danger is no longer the ferocious tiger. It's the pissed-off wife or girlfriend. And when she comes at him, baring her teeth and berating him with criticism, his body sees danger and involuntarily switches into ANS arousal, which triggers the fight-flight response. Now, since most guys don't want to physically fight their partners, they flee instead. And there are 3 ways that men flee from conflict. The first type of fleeing is physical. This is when the man leaves the room or the house, or he hides out in his workshop or avoids coming home. The second type of fleeing is mental or psychic fleeing. Here, the mind is taking a hike. The man is deaf, dumb, blind, practically drooling on his face. He's got no hablo inglés written all over. He's practically gone. But he's physically present, but he's mentally gone. And the last type of fleeing is what I call verbal fleeing. And here the guy is verbally escaping responsibility, making excuses, defending himself, justifying. He's using words to escape. Now, the problem here is that a woman doesn't know that these various fleeing behaviors are caused by primitive biological programming. And a woman thinks instead that her guy is fleeing because he doesn't care enough about her to resolve the conflict. So her hurt morphs into anger. And then she expresses that anger with great intensity and unwittingly sets off more biological fire alarms, more fleeing, and a downward spiral of conflict is born. And did you know that this fight pattern is the number 1 cause of relationship conflict, breakups, divorce, and domestic violence? So I bet you're wondering, how can you break the cycle? So the answer is what I call relationship climate control. Remember I said that heated fighting triggers a chemical imbalance in men's bodies that causes them to flee. Well, it turns out that cooling the climate literally shuts off the fight-flight response, which makes husband withdrawal magically disappear. And then, and only then, are you going to have a guy who's going to stick around to resolve the conflict with you. All right, so how do you cool the climate down? So there are 3 things you need to do. And if you've heard me talk to you about this, I always beat this drum because healing your old scars is paramount. If you've been reading my columns, my books, and listening to the show, you know that old scars from our childhood have a nasty way of heating the climate and ruining our adult relationships. And why? Because our brains always work by association, comparing present-day events with past hurts. And I call this the emotional lake effect. You know, just as the actual lake effect, where the storms gather strength as they cross the Great Lakes, our unconscious minds are always dipping into our memory reservoir and stirring up an internal emotional storm. So we're reacting with great intensity to a relatively minor current event because our minds are literally reacting to all the buried feelings from previous similar hurts. And then we dump this emotional storm onto our partners, raining all the old buried feelings onto them, and we don't even know what we're doing it. Let me give you an example of this. I'm seeing this distressed couple right now where the wife's mother always controlled her and gave her the silent treatment. So this past week, her husband asked her to sit with him on the couch and watch a movie, and she just told him no. And the husband felt very hurt, especially because she's been giving him the silent treatment and rejecting him for some time now. So he tried to tell her about his hurt, and she went into a rage, screaming, "You're controlling me, you're guilt-tripping me, you're trying to make me do what you want." But he just wanted her to understand how he felt. So it's easy to see why she overreacted to him, because she associates his hurt feelings with the old scar that she suffered from a mother who guilted her and controlled her. So she goes crazy because she's unconsciously recalling how she felt with her controlling mother. Now, you know old scars are afoot when you find yourself overreacting to a minor event and when you can't shake the feeling, okay? Now, obviously, I don't have time here to go into all the details of how you can use your relationship to heal your old scars. Use my book, Till Death Do Us Part. It's going to show you how to do this. Go to my site. Right on the top banner, there's a book heading, a drop-down menu. You can download the book right away and get started. Get started on healing your old scars. All right, now, in addition to healing your old scars, you want to identify and eliminate your fight traps. These are those faulty fighting tactics that we all have learned in our first families. And as you'll see when you read Till Death Do Us Part, I divide fight traps into open warfare and secret warfare. Now, open warfare includes name calling, put downs, blaming, character assassinations, sarcasm. Those are the outward slaps in the face. And then secret warfare tactics include silent treatment, guilt tripping, whining, complaining, nagging, recruiting allies. You see, the point to remember is whether you use open or secret warfare tactics, they heat the climate and they cause more husband withdrawal and more fighting. So obviously I can't go into all the details now about how to identify and eliminate all your fight traps, so read the book, Till Death Do Us Part. Now, the third way to cool the climate is to train your brain to fight for you, not against you. And what do I mean by this? So most of us have felt put down and belittled when we were little. And the scars that result from this cause our brains to actually negatively distort what we see and hear. So let me give you an example. Coming back to the couple that I talked about a few minutes ago. For weeks, the wife has been telling her husband that she can't ever forgive him what he's done to her over the years. And she keeps threatening to end the marriage. So when the husband saw that his wife was so upset in response to his telling her that he felt hurt, he started to weep and he said, "I hate seeing you in such pain. And if I can't find a way to make you happy with me, I'm going to release you and give you a divorce." And guess what happened? Her mind negatively distorted what he said. And she went off on him and said, "I can't believe that you would divorce me now that your company's about to sell for a fortune and I can see you want to screw me financially." Talk about a negative distortion. Now, it's not hard to see how negative distortions also heat the climate, right? So obviously you've got to train your brain to fight for you, not against you. And I have a 3-part technique for this that I go over in the book, Till Death Do Us Part. And it consists of holding your horses, taking a step back in time to actually uncover the past hurt that's being triggered by the current discussion or situation, and then checking out your suspicions. So this enables you to help your brain to realize that you may be wrong in your interpretation of what's being said and done. And when you write your negative distortions, you're automatically cooling down the climate. So can't go into full detail on how to train your brain in this short little segment. So do read the book. Now, what else can you do to cool the climate? Remember, timing is everything. Don't try to have a serious discussion when your partner is watching his or her favorite show. Also, knock before entering. Make sure your partner is emotionally home and available to talk before you rush in like a bull in a china shop, right? Now, you also want to make the commitment to learn to speak in a way that makes your partner want to listen to you. And that means learning how to present your issues properly in a cool tone and without attacking. That's the key. And you've heard me say a million times, well, it may feel good for you to get your rocks off in the moment. On the rocks is where your relationship is going to end up. So my point is you don't want to allow yourself to emotionally vent, rant, rave, scream, yell, attack, or any variance thereof. Because whatever you say or do boomerangs back on you. If you hurt your partner, you hurt yourself. So you make the decision to control yourself, focus on not releasing your feelings at your partner's expense, and instead be constructive and only say or do what you know is going to benefit your partner and the relationship. Because in the end, what's good for your partner and your relationship is good for you. So the better you kick off the discussion, the cooler you stay, the better chance you have of seeing the discussion through to a happy conclusion. All right, and until death do us part, I show you step by step how to use my XY formula to do this and how to use a disclaimer before you state what your issue is and how you feel so that you make sure your partner knows you're on his or her side and you're not out to deprive him of vital bodily parts. All right, let me take a break and I will return to this wonderful, cool topic in a moment.
You're listening to Ask Dr. Love with Dr. Jamie Turndorf. To speak to Dr. Turndorf live on the air, call 888-463-6748. AskDrLove.com is the web's premier relationship advice site since 1996. Visit AskDrLove.com to search thousands of free relationship advice articles on any relationship issue you may have. Or you can submit a question to her free advice column. However, if you're listening live, why not call in? Don't be shy. Dr. Turndorf wants to help you, and this is a unique chance to get a personal answer from one of today's most respected experts. So, if you have a question for her, please call in now at 888-463-6748. That's 888-463-6748. Now back to Ask Dr. Love with Jamie Turndorf, Ph.D. Once again, here's Dr. Love.
Hello again, and welcome to Ask Dr. Love Radio. I'm Dr. Jamie Turndorf, and I'm talking with you about how you need to keep your cool and make it your number one relationship rule. Before I took a break, I was telling you, you got to speak in a way that makes your partner want to listen. Very important. There's some other cool down techniques. I go into all of them until death do us part. So let's get on to the Quickie, Dr. Love's Quickie. First, let me start with some tweets. Here's a couple. Keep cool and your love will rule. I'm banging that drum today. And rather than blast her, make her filled with laughter. And make staying cool your new relationship rule. And if you keep blowing your emotional gasket, your relationship's going to end up in a casket. And mind your beak and think before you speak. And if you keep triggering your partner's withdrawal reactions, you're going to end up on opposite factions. Instead of blowing off steam, fight for the team. All right. Now, let me tell you, I promised in my newsletter that in this Quickie segment, I was going to talk to you about laughter and humor and how you can actually use it judiciously to actually cool the climate down. So there's something called the science of laughter. Have you heard about it? In fact, not even scientists can actually pin down the basics of what laughter is and how it's sparked and the reasons why laughter seems to be such a powerful panacea for so many things. But even though science does little justice to the task of defining laughter, we have been able to provide some intriguing insights into the biological effects of laughter. And one such study was performed in 2002 by the University of California Irvine College of Medicine on the biological effect of humor on the body. And their research actually proves that laughter is good medicine because it curtails the production of different stress hormones and boosts endorphins. Now, remember I said the ANS arousal and the husband withdrawal is triggered by stress hormones. So you can see where laughter, by reducing stress hormones, could actually stop the withdrawal response. And laughter also helps to facilitate the release of muscle tension. And research shows that anger and humor cannot coexist because the biochemicals that accompany humor are actually incompatible with those that accompany anger. So when humor goes over well, it can also be an effective means of diffusing conflict. So considering some of the biological effects of laughter, this actually makes a great deal of sense because the response to laughter is antithetical to that of the body's response during conflict. And even indirect exposure to conflict can produce a biological stress response, according to studies like one that was conducted at the University of Rochester and the University of Minnesota and the University of Notre Dame. And I'm not even going to read you the title to this because it'll take me the rest of this segment. But just know that anger and laughter are incompatible. But I don't want you to confuse humor with sarcasm because people often make that mistake. And when they're sarcastic, the definition of sarcasm is agreement that's not truly meant. If you're sarcastic and you slam your partner, that's not going to go off. That's not going to make ANS arousal and withdrawal diminish. It's not going to cool the climate. So what you want to do is you don't want to belittle or show up your opponent. You want to just alleviate the tension and help both of you see the absurdities and the contradiction of life in general and the topic you're arguing about. So be careful. Do not use humor as a brush off because your partner has got to feel that you're actively listening to what he or she is saying and not using humor to deflect your partner's concerns, okay? Now, the other thing you want to do is you want to make sure whether humor is the right approach for a given situation, because it can alleviate a difficult situation and it can lighten the tension, but it can also escalate the arguing if it's used in a way that suggests belittling of the opponent. So you want to ask yourself, first of all, is this person somebody who's going to respond well to my humor? Does this person lack the humor gene? It can happen. And you also want to ask whether humor is appropriate in this given context, because some fights are just too heated or it's too sensitive a topic and humor would be inappropriate, okay? So you're going to weigh that. And then you're also going to ask yourself, if you have decided that it is an appropriate situation, then you've got to find the right moment to insert the humor into the conversation. And the one thing you're going to do when you insert it is you're going to add perspective, okay? Because by bringing in the outside world, you realize that what you're fighting about doesn't matter. Like, let's say your partner forgets to put the toilet seat down. You could throw in a comment like, yeah, it is nice to have indoor plumbing, right? Then we're being light. And another really good way to use humor is at your own expense. Humor directed at yourself, or self-deprecating humor. I'll never forget when I went to France with my husband one of the first times, and his sister was being a real witch and making fun of the age difference between us. So she put an actual baby high chair at the table to make fun of me. Now, my husband didn't see it, and I was so upset by this. And afterwards, I tried to use humor, and I said, look, I know I'm young enough to be wearing diapers. See? So I made light of it, and then I also said, he then used humor and said something like, well, yeah, I'm so old, I'm blind and deaf, and I didn't see it. Well, the humor deflated the situation. All right? So now you got the idea. I'm going to take another little break, and I'll be back with you in a moment with some juicy questions.
You're listening to Ask Dr. Love with Dr. Jamie Turndorf. To speak to Dr. Turndorf live on the air, call 888-463-6748. That's 888-463-6748. If you like what you're hearing, you can learn about Dr. Turndorf's techniques for turning conflict into connection and healing in her critically acclaimed, groundbreaking book, Till Death Do Us Part, Unless I Kill You First, a step-by-step guide for resolving relationship conflict. Find out more about this book and read a free excerpt by visiting AskDrLove.com. This is Ask Dr. Love with Dr. Jamie Turndorf. And if you have a question for her, please call in now at 888-463-6748. This show is for you, the listeners, so please give her a call now. You're listening to Ask Dr. Love with Jamie Turndorf, Ph.D. Once again, here's Dr. Love.
Hello again, and welcome back to Ask Dr. Love Radio. I'm Dr. Jamie Turndorf, and I'm having fun being with you today. So here is the question that I alluded to earlier. It's called confusion. And it came in actually this week, and I picked it because I thought that we could all learn a lot from this question. Here it is. Hi, Dr. Love. I've been with my boyfriend for a few months now, and I'm still a virgin. He wants to have sex, but I'm having second thoughts about giving up my virginity because I'm not yet assured that he really loves me deeply. There's something inside me that says I deserve someone better, although I could say that he treats me right. And he's not the type of guy who parties and flirts with other women while on a relationship. And he's really a quiet person, and he does not really have a lot of friends. And I also have an issue about his ex-girlfriend. I'm insecure about her, and I feel like he is still affected by his ex-girlfriend, although she did not treat him right on the course of their relationship. I really don't like the girl to be happy at all, and I don't like to feel this way, but I can't. I loathe her. The girl started seeing this guy that used to be his rival, and I feel like he is affected by it because he looks so withdrawn and sad. I know I should not have these thoughts, but I just don't know what to do, and I know that I should be happy because he is with me, but I just feel like she still affects him a lot. He treats me well and follows what I like, but I'm not sure if he is sincere with his actions or he's just doing this because he wants to have sex with me. And I'm thinking that if I would give up my virginity to him, he would not treat me well anymore. And I feel like that's the only thing that makes me stay with him. And is this normal to have thoughts that I needed someone better than him, even though he treats me right? Or do you think deep inside of me, I'm not sure of his love for me, and that's why I'm thinking about these things? Help me and advise me regarding these things. Thanks. Signed, Confused Girl. All right, little confused girl. Now, you say that you think that he's still affected by his ex since he looks sad and withdrawn. And maybe this is why you don't feel sure of his love, because he's still in love with his ex. Now, don't forget, it's very common for us humans to distort what we see and hear and assign meanings that fit with our own stories and our own scars. So with regard to your boyfriend and his ex, you say that you feel that he's still affected by her, but you didn't give me any examples to support this idea of yours. So how do you know that his sadness is even related to her at all? Maybe he's just a sad guy. Now, have you reflected on the possibility that you are bringing some of your own issues to the table? Assuming that he's into her more than you, assuming that he's only staying to get laid, assuming that he'll stop treating you well after you give it up. Now, I want you to take a moment to see whether there's a link between what you're thinking and feeling about him and your relationship and your old scars. So when you speak about him, I hear you talking about a triangle that involves his ex. And in this triangle, you don't feel like you're the favorite. Did this pattern happen in your first family? Did you feel second-classed in relationship to another sibling? Did you feel dropped? Now, I bet if you dig around in your psyche, you're going to find that the feelings you are bringing to your relationship with your boyfriend actually are feelings you had earlier in your life. And the thing is, when we're traumatized in our formative years, I should say our deformative years, these traumas have a way of haunting us. And they actually are like ghosts from the past. They have a way of haunting our present and ruining our relationships. And this is because these phantoms from the past make us distort what we see and hear in the present, leading us to misinterpret or magnify what's occurring. So, for example, if you didn't feel first as a kid, you're going to assume that your boyfriend prefers his ex to you. And if you were dropped as a kid, you're going to assume that your boyfriend is going to drop you too. So if you look at the situation rationally, rather than through what may very well be the distorted lens of past trauma, you actually may be able to see a devoted, albeit sad boyfriend who treats you well. Now, for the record, I highly doubt that he's in the relationship to get laid, because for one thing, he's been with you for months. Now, if sex were his only goal, he could have certainly found another girl to score, and much sooner. So when you make a thorough analysis of yourself, I think that you're going to find that the origins of your seeds of doubt are not coming entirely from now. And when you make the proper links to your past, oftentimes the feelings that are bothering you regarding your current relationship or your partner actually dissipate. Your mind works this way, and it's kind of funny how it does that. It just sort of puts something to rest when you connect it back to the original wound. Now, if you find that your feelings of doubt still linger after you conduct a self-analysis, then I want you to assume that there is some truth to your insecurity. And then by all means, you want to talk to him about your concerns. Now, if you decide to talk to him, make sure that you do not accuse him of any wrongdoing. Stay cool and do not attack him. So instead, speak about the feelings that you're picking up from him and frame your feelings in the form of questions that are going to invite him to fill in the blanks. So, for example, you'd say, why do I have the feeling that you're still mourning the loss of your ex-girlfriend? Or why do I have the feeling that it's really hurting you that your ex-girlfriend chose to date your rival? Now, after you ask the open-ended question, you give him a chance then. Well, it's not that open-ended. You're kind of pointing him, and you're using your feeling to get him to verify whether your feeling is correct or not. Now, as for the sense that you have that he's only in this for the sex, or that he'll end up treating you badly after he finally gets you in the sack, this is a hard topic to bring up. No pun intended, because bringing these fears up could easily lead him to feel that you're accusing him of being a scoundrel. And one way you might want to broach this subject is to talk about your own old scars. And if you can give him an example of how you felt dropped or neglected when you were young, and explain that this old scar is making you afraid to take a risk with him now, then he should naturally feel empathy for you rather than take your remarks as attacks on his character. And his empathy should lead him to reassure you. And the sincerity of his response, or the lack of sincerity, should help you to be able to discern whether your doubts are founded or not. Now, I've given you a lot to work with, so first identify your own old scars. And if you need help with this, use my book, Till Death Do Us Part, okay? Because that book is all about how our old scars heat the climate and wreck our relationships. And I give you a whole list in the book of the various old scars and then how they resurface in your adult relationships, the kind of problems you have. So it actually helps you make the link up. Now, and it also shows you how to heal your wound. So if your doubts in him still linger, then explore your concerns by framing your feelings in the form of questions, and his responses should help you figure out whether your fears are founded or not. Okay? All right, let me know how you make out. So let's go on to girl problems. This one came in recently too. And this one, I really liked the way the guy who sent this question to me was very humble, and he admitted the mistakes he made. It's a really lovely quality we should all aspire to. So, dear Dr. Love, well, I met this girl about 4 months ago at a high school soccer game. And when we first saw each other, something just clicked. And then she found me on Facebook, and we started talking. And she has a boyfriend, but I talked to her anyways, which was a big mistake. Her boyfriend happens to be a good friend. She liked me, and I liked her. And she was trying to figure out whether to go with me or stay with her boyfriend. And she's treated me rudely, but I didn't care since I was so blind. And yesterday I randomly texted her saying that we shouldn't talk anymore because you are with him. And then she made this texted back whole dramatic thing, and that's when we started our fight. And we called each other some bad names, and I told her boyfriend about when I saw her without him knowing, and the bikini picture she sent me. And I kind of regret telling him that, though. And after the fight, I was so mad, and I wasn't sad. But then a few hours after, I regretted everything I did and said, and I believe she played me. But I want to make things right. We may be on the same sport team in a few months, so it may be awkward. And what can I do to make friendships and try to make them move past all of this? I just need advice to get me through this, and thanks for the help. Okay, and you sign it totally brokenhearted. So I do commend you for wanting to make this right. Now, you have two issues to address, and the first is cleaning up the mess, but the second is learning to not say and do things in the heat of the moment. In other words, you need to learn to not act on your raw emotional impulses. So let's start with the first issue. You say you want to make things right with this girl, since you may be on the same team, but I assume you also want to make things right with your guy friend. So to make things right with her, first, you got to apologize for having said awful things to her. And she herself has much to apologize for as well. But it was inappropriate for her to behave rudely toward you and to have flirted with you by sending you a bikini picture when she was dating someone else. But that's for her to realize. You just take responsibility for what you did and said that you aren't proud of. Okay? Now, as for your guy friend, you're in a very touchy spot here because you betrayed your friend's trust by flirting with his girl behind his back. And telling him that his girlfriend flirted with him behind his back is really shifting the blame onto someone other than you. So, and doing this means that you're going to be destroying his relationship with her. And knowing him the way you do you really think that he'd want to know all the truth about what went on between the two of you? And if you tell him that you took the bait and flirted with her behind his back, that's pretty likely to destroy your friendship with him. So here's a case in which telling the truth could be more destructive than it's worth, right? So you need to tell the truth, first of all, to yourself. You need to take a hard look at yourself and your behavior. And you didn't behave honorably by carrying on with your good friend's girl. So in the future, you need to talk to yourself before you do or say anything. And you need to ask yourself if what you're about to say or do is morally right and constructive for all parties. And in this case, you went with your most primitive urges and focused on self-gratification, first by going after her and then by gratifying your angry impulses and saying terrible things to her. So if you can go into action and do destructive things, you can also go into action and walk away. So the next time you feel the urge to act on an impulse, pause, take 5, and think. Remember, your purpose in this life isn't to gratify yourself at another person's expense. Frustrating of our urges and impulses is a necessary part of self-development. So the more you practice and the more you evolve, the easier it's going to be for you to sit with strong feelings and urges and not do anything about them. And I really do commend you for beginning this work at a young age because you're already on the right path. So just keep on keeping on. And whenever I talk about not acting on impulse, not gratifying yourself sexually or gratifying the urge to release rage, because that is a gratification. When we act on our anger, it's releasing the internal tension, and that is a gratification. I'm always reminded of this case that I treated. Oh my gosh, it might have been 30 years ago already. I know, I look much younger than my age. So I got a call from one of the most famous families in the country, and they were telling me that their son-in-law had just been arrested for flashing. And would I help him? Talk about acting on impulse, feeling like whipping it out. He whipped it out. So I worked with the guy, and I dealt with it just the way I'm speaking to you about controlling your impulses. You got to keep it in your pants, even when you feel like whipping it out. Don't whip it out. Sit on it, literally. And when you don't act on impulse, then your observing ego can study what's going on, why you're feeling the way you're feeling, and then you can come up with more constructive ways of handling your feelings. So frustrating yourself is the key to evolving, having better relationships, and not getting locked up for whipping it out. So let me take a little break, and I'll be back with you in a moment on Ask Dr. Love.
You're listening to Ask Dr. Love with Dr. Jamie Turndorf. To speak to Dr. Turndorf live on the air, call 888-463-6748. That's 888-463-6748. If you've recently been through a breakup and are looking for a second chance, wondering how you can reconcile with your ex, or if it's even possible after all you've been through, Dr. Turndorf's latest book, Make Up, Don't Break Up, presents her 5-step plan for reconciling with your ex. This plan was developed out of years of research, working with thousands of couples at her Center for Emotional Communication. This is a proven no-hype and no-nonsense method that gets right to the root of the problem to guide you to the right path towards reigniting a lasting relationship. For more about Make Up, Don't Break Up, visit AskDrLove.com. You're listening to Ask Dr. Love with Jamie Turndorf, Ph.D. Once again, here's Dr. Love.
Hello again, and welcome back to Ask Dr. Love Radio. So we're talking about how keeping cool, that is emotionally cool, is your number one relationship rule. And also, when you cool it down, your relationship will be hotter. But not hotter under the collar, hotter in the romance department in every way. So here's another question I have for you. How can I make him stop doing things that are making me feel guilty? Dear Dr. Love, so there was this classmate of mine 3 years ago. And we're not that close, but my other friends kept on linking us. So I tried my best to avoid him because I'm not really into him. And of course, as the years passed, it eventually died down, so it was fine. We're cool. But then last night, it was our prom night, and I danced with him. And I asked him about a thing I wanted to clarify, if he really had feelings for me back then, and he said yes. And then he returned the same question, which I replied truthfully, which is, not really, maybe a little. And then I asked him about this friend of mine he's liking on this present time. And he told me that he really likes her and everything. And it was great because I totally want them to be together. And when the song was about to end, I told him it was nice, and we had closure or realization of things. I excused myself to dance with my other friends. Then all of a sudden they're saying that he's crying because of me, which I really didn't understand why. And I may be that dense, but I really have no idea why. The morning after, he kept on texting me that he wants us to talk because what our conversation wasn't a closure. So I messaged him on Facebook. And so there I asked him, what did I do? And he told me that I made him remember the things that happened 3 years ago. And he told me that he likes me again and it won't vanish anytime soon. And that made me think that I unintentionally gave him false hopes. And he's saying that he wasted all those years. And then he asked me if he would just wait, if he'll just wait until his feelings subside again, which I replied yes, because honestly, I don't want to do anything with him. And that ended our conversation. And I really feel guilty about it, you know, and letting his hopes up and then crushing it down. But I was just totally honest with him. And I feel bad about this friend of mine that he likes because I totally ruined it. And now he's posting stuff like, because of some person, I can't breathe, or something which I find totally stupid, but again, I feel guilty. Should I ignore him to let him move on, or just talk to him and tell him to snap out of it? And what happens after that? I'm really lost here. So thank you, Dr. Love. More power, smiley face. And then you sign it, guilty as charged. Okay, so I do want you to know you're a dear and you are a sweet soul, because your question to me shows me what a good person you are, and that you took the time to write and ask me what you can do to help this poor guy is really, really thoughtful. So now, I want to help you to see what you did to raise this guy's hopes, so that when you understand it, you'll protect another guy from being hurt, all right? So first of all, when you asked him if he liked you 3 years back, this could have easily been taken as an interest on your part, because generally a person doesn't ask unless he or she is interested in forming a relationship. And if you aren't interested, why ask? So this definitely could have ignited his hope. Now, the second way that you gave him false hope occurred in response to his asking you whether you were interested in him. And you said, and this is a quote from what you said, not really, maybe a little. Now, can you see that this maybe a little response delivered a mixed message? Mixed messages trigger hope. Now, I understand that you may have been wishy-washy because you didn't want to hurt him. I get that. But sometimes we have to be cruel to be kind, as the saying goes. Now, if you're absolutely not interested in someone, then you owe it to that person to decline in a kind way without giving any false hope. So in the future, you could say something like, I find you a wonderful person, and I like you like a brother. Now, when you tell a man that you like him like a brother or a friend, he knows that you have zero romantic interest, okay? Now, as for what to do now to help this poor guy out, if you think that he's still harboring false hope, then you can fix that by saying what I suggested. And you can also take responsibility for having sent him mixed signals. And you could tell him that you like him so much as a person that you didn't want to hurt him. And then you could also say that you didn't realize that you actually were hurting him more by sending him mixed signals. Now, in the end, we must learn to weather the inevitable rejections in life and love. And I wish all women were as thoughtful and caring as you. Alrighty. So now let me go to a reading between the sheets segment. That's my favorite part. So this one is wondering how to help him forget my past one-night stands. Dear Dr. Love, I've got a question concerning my boyfriend. We've been together for 5 months, and for the last 2 months we have been arguing a lot about my previous sex life. And I've had 2 one-night stands 1.5 years ago, 1 and 1.5 years before I met him. And my boyfriend cannot accept that. He says that I am everything that he wants a girl to be. But the knowledge of me having sex just for one time makes it hard for him to love me. He feels he can't trust me, but I always tell him the truth. He asks me a lot of questions about my earlier sex life, what positions I tried, and so on. And I don't feel comfortable answering these questions. But if I don't, he believes that I've tried everything. And if I say, yes, I've done that, he also feels that I've tried everything. But all my experiences from sex come from earlier relationships and not from my one-night stands. So he had 3 longer relationships and 2 one-night stands. However, he believes that it's different since he had one-night stands with someone he knew before, and that he believed that they were going to get together. And he says that he can't accept or forgive my earlier sex life and that he can't be together with me. But on the other hand, he says that I'm the one that he wants to be with for the rest of his life if he could just stop thinking about these things. Now, he's moving to another town in 6 months, and he's asked me to move with him. And he says he can't help thinking about it, and that he tries to think nice and beautiful thoughts about me. And we have a really great sex life, and I've experienced a lot of new stuff with him. And when he doesn't think about me having sex with others, it's just great, and we have so much fun. So what can I do to help him not to think about this? And I tell him that I regret it, but he doesn't believe me. Is there any way that I can make him accept me? I need some advice about how I should handle this situation. Because right now, he's really depressed about this, and he's really thinking about breaking up, but he can't go through with it. He's now in France and we live in Sweden. Skiing. Oh, he's in France skiing. We live in Sweden. And he called before and he was asking me why he can't trust me and why I had to have one-night stands. And he thinks about it all the time at the moment, and I feel that there's nothing I can do about it, or is it? And I would be really grateful for some advice about what to do, because I've never felt so strong for anyone before, and I want to be with him. Okay, so listen. When a person can't let go of an issue, that's a sign that he's struggling with an emotional issue from childhood. Remember I said the 2 clues that old scars are afoot? You have a disproportionately strong emotional reaction, and the second clue is you can't shake the reaction, okay? Now, here's what happens. As I said, the mind works by association, which means that the current event triggers associations to similar traumatic events from childhood. And because these associations occur on an unconscious level, the person isn't aware of what's going on. All he knows is he's upset and he can't let go of the issue. And then the person continually returns to the issue, hoping that if he talks it over, or in your case, if he asks more questions, that he's going to finally feel settled. But the plan never works. He never does feel settled because he isn't actually facing the real issue, the traumatic event that was awakened. And the only way to get past the impasse is to help him stop focusing on the nuts and bolts of your previous encounters, pardon the pun, and make the link between the current event and his past. So to accomplish this, you got to ask him to tell you how he feels about your past, hurt, threatened, fearful of abandonment. And then when he identifies the feeling, then you ask him to recall when he felt this way as a kid. For example, if he says that he feels that he can't measure up to your past lovers, then he's talking about not feeling good enough. And then ask him to link this feeling to his past and ask him when he felt inadequate as a child. Now, if he feels afraid that you would compare him to your past lovers and eventually leave him for someone better, again, ask him how this relates to his history. Who made him feel that he wasn't good enough? Who threatened to abandon him if he didn't measure up? And if you get him talking about his past, he's soon going to uncover the real reason why he obsesses over your sexual past. So just stay focused and don't allow him to veer off onto a blow-by-blow, if I may say, chronicle of your own past sexcapades, because any digressions are going to prevent him from finding the path to healing. And when he does, he will no longer need to obsess about your past. Okay? So you can see how when you make these associations back to childhood wounds and don't know it, and then you get caught in these heated argument cycles, the only way to break free, to pull the plug, is to make the association conscious, identify the old scar, and heal it. This is what Till Death Do Us Part is all about. So again, I encourage you to read the book and really allow the book to heal you. And the more healed you are, the cooler your relationship climate's going to be, and the more your love is going to heat up. Now, speaking about cooling the climate, I was talking at the end of the first segment about how you need to speak in a way that makes your partner want to listen to you. But another really important thing that I didn't have time to mention regarding cooling the climate is you've got to truly listen well. Because if your partner really feels that you're listening and understanding and taking responsibility and that you're willing to work to resolve your issue, you're cooling the climate. So in addition to presenting your issues properly, you really want to have good listening skills. And did you know, this is amazing, that most conflicts can actually be resolved by listening and understanding each other? And it's true. So you know how much better you feel when someone truly gets why you're upset. And in Till Death Do Us Part, I'm going to teach you the various listening skills, from mirroring to restating to questioning to clarify using my 5 questions technique. And then also I'm going to show you in the book my relationship first aid tools, and you need to know these tools because even the best discussions can derail, and you need to know how to get your discussion back on track before it goes overboard. And the key is you really want to Get your discussions back on track before they derail, because a failed discussion leaves all kinds of unresolved negative feelings. And these feelings hang around and they create an emotional residue that makes it even harder to stay cool and resolve your issue the next time around. So my book will show you exactly how to cool down a discussion that's derailing and how to steer it back on course, and also you need to know when to abort your mission before it's too late, and how to reapproach the discussion in a better way. And another thing you're going to need to know, which is really important, is make sure you don't fight on value conflicts. Millions of couples throughout the world make this mistake, where they're fighting about religious values, money values, sexual values, political values. You can't fight about these things, because these values make up the core of yourself. And to ask somebody to change your core is an insult. You know, it's like making the leopard change the spots. And who's to say your values are wrong and mine are right, or vice versa? We have to accept our value differences and work with them in an accepting, collaborative, loving way. And till death do us part, I show you how to do that too. So once you cool down the climate, you're going to stop husband withdrawal or, partner withdrawal. And then you're going to have a partner who's going to stick around and want to resolve all the issues that come up. And you can use these methods that I'm describing also to help your relationships with friends and family. It works with everybody. All right. So now, we also were talking a little bit. I didn't get to finish. I wanted to say something to you about the humor piece. Now, remember we talked about how if you decide to insert humor, it lightens the climate. But you don't want to just leave something unresolved. So you have to make sure that once you've cooled the climate down, that you do resolve your issues. You resolve them either in that moment, now that everybody's cool, or you take, a little break, to calm down even longer, and then you come back and you resolve your issues using the step-by-step plan I outline in Till Death Do Us Part. Because remember, many, many couples that come to me for couples therapy after decades and decades of problems, they had issues that they didn't resolve, and every time you come back to the issue and don't resolve it, it heats the climate more until eventually there is so much resentment that it gets to be a point of no return. So I want you to keep it cool. See your discussions to a finish line so they don't keep getting recycled. All right? That is the most important thing to remember. Resolve it and move on so that you're free to be in the moment, enjoying each other. What else? I also wanted to remind you guys, because I don't, I've been told by my webmaster, you have to remind everybody, when you sign up for my newsletter, you get 11 free workbooks and tests. And these, I've really put a lot of effort into these to address all kinds of relationship issues, to help you out from creating your ideal mate, to figuring out where a relationship went wrong, to assessing whether the partner you have your eye on is ready for a relationship, looking at whether you're ready for a relationship, many, many tests and workbooks. So I want you to sign up for the newsletter and take advantage of these tests and workbooks, because this is your Bible. And that's all I have for you today. Keep it cool, and your love will rule. I'll see you next week on Ask Dr. Love Radio.